Welcome to Success Solutionz, the podcast that explores transformative journeys and the power of reinvention. Today, we're thrilled to have Christian Ramos with us. Christian's story is one of remarkable turnaround. From overcoming addiction to founding Christian Daniel Boots, his journey embodies resilience and redemption. Through his boot brand, Christian channels lessons from his past to craft a future defined by strength and hope. Join us as Christian shares insights on battling personal demons, the drive to create, and how every step we take can lead us to a path of success and fulfillment. Get ready for an inspiring conversation that proves no matter where you start, your finish can be extraordinary. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Success Solutionz podcast. I have here with me my guest, Christian Ramos, from Christian Daniel Boots. How's it going today, Christian? Can you give us a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, man. First of all, Eric, absolutely grateful to be here. I mean, we go back. Really excited about your journey and just to be a part of it. Thank you for thinking of me. Super excited. Yeah, I mean, I was, I'm first generation Mexican American. I was born and raised in SF, in the city, and spent most of my childhood, adult life there, which I think, thinking back really helped shape who I am today. The Bay Area as a whole is a huge melting pot, and San Francisco in particular, it's really small, a lot of different people. It really taught me a lot of things, but I grew up there. Family, friends were based there. I now am in San Diego, California, and super grateful to be here. But, having family and friends there, I'm always back and forth, and just really grateful. I mean, I think I'm a human being who loves other human beings. And, as part of the business too, I believe we're all interconnected as human beings, and really just trying to facilitate that now through Boots, but really beyond that through, actual intimacy, love, and good relationships with people.
Awesome, man. And I really appreciate you coming on today. I've always admired your journey and, everything you've done to be able to get to where you're at. So on that level, on that note, can you share with us a little bit about, your story about how you started your boot brand and what inspired you to enter this particular market?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think really thinking about it, it goes back to childhood. My dad would always wear Western style cowboy boots. And I just remember, him, my uncles, like that was their like Sunday shoes. They didn't have they would wear jeans, suits, whatever they wore, that's what they'd have. And I was always just kind of drawn to like aesthetic of things. So in particular, the boots, the colors, the design, and that was very like early on, right? I was always the kid that couldn't really have like the Nikes or the Jordans. I was a Converse kid, but I always liked the colorways and, how people really loved their shoes. And so as I grew and had my own job and my own money, I started also compulsively buying Jordans and Nikes and limited edition stuff and the nightcap and the whole nine, and bought a lot of those. And one day I saw my middle brother, Alex, he's more fashion forward, and he had these Chelseas on. And I remember just seeing those and being like, wow, I got to get a pair. I felt like it was just kind of, I was like in my late 20s. It was more of like I was trying to transition into a different style of clothing and footwear, and just fit my transition in life kind of in a better way. And I bought a pair of Clark's Gobi Chelsea boots, and that kind of set forth like, what went on to be another, kind of boot buying compulsion. And really, the way that led to me collecting about 14 different pairs of boots, different brands, all the, US, Spain, Mexican, all kinds of things. And that basically led to me being like, man, I like this about this boot. I like this about this one, but like, I wonder if I can merge them, and what really like actually pushed me to do it was growing up. I used to go to Guadalajara, Mexico. So my aunt is in the manufacturing business to this day. Like almost 40 years now at this point for other brands out there in Mexico, but they do like synthetic kind of glued together shoes. So what we do is a whole different style, but I remember the community at the factory, right? So all those employees are still in my life, right? Most of them. And I just remember like the carne asadas, the people getting together, coming over on Sundays, doing food, breakfast at our house in Mexico. So it was really this like super close knit community. And I've always loved people. Again, going back to like, I believe we're all interconnected as human beings, and we just facilitate that connection through different methods or forms throughout our lives. I wanted to merge what I loved, which was boots and people. And that's what really led me off on this journey, like more than the product, like what we're doing today, all the people I've met through this journey, like that's what I care.
That's awesome. I always love hearing that story. It's amazing all the stuff that you've gone through. And, even in the past, growing up, I know this, but, maybe our viewers don't. So you did struggle with addiction, earlier on in life. Can you tell us a little bit about, how your sobriety has influenced you and your business and the journey that you're continuing on?
Yeah, I mean, great question. It's kind of a loaded one, I feel like that in itself we could spend on all day, but yeah, I mean, looking back at it, we talk off air kind of a lot, and addiction has really in various forms, right? Like lust, alcohol, drugs, right? Like have been a part of my story, unfortunately, like from a very young age, and I always, I say this, I feel like what contributed to it is I was running from two things I can't escape, right? And this is kind of a new perspective. It's like myself and God. And those two things I've been figuring out how to get away from. And I've used different methods to escape that, right? So the truth is, like, I've never really fully loved myself or gotten to know myself. So I use, different methods to numb out that pain. And, whether that's women, drugs, alcohol, all those things. And, it took me down a really dark path for a long time. I feel like I always was a kid who had all these ideas and dreams, and I would always try to set them in motion, but never really could. They were always stagnant. There was always like, it never manifested into anything, it was just solid ideas and trying to do it. But, yeah, I think it hindered a lot, I mean, I was really, like, the way I describe it is like in bondage of self. Like I couldn't get out of these. It's like an invisible chain that always kept me captive, and now being in recovery in a couple of different programs, really for me, like the key piece is finding God of my understanding, right? Which is Jesus. In the last year, through a lot of pain and suffering, has really changed the way I go about my life. So the relationships, going back to that, it's like I can now see people for who they are, not what they can do for me, and accepting them as they are and who they are, and also accepting myself for the first time, looking inward and learning to love myself. Like what really motivates me, like where and why are these characters of defects there, addressing them in a spiritual manner, right? Like I say, I have a spiritual malady and there's a solution, but it's a spiritual program, right? And it requires like surrender, right? And surrender is actually an action. Like it requires action. It's not just like, oh, like I surrender this and it just goes away. I used to pray and stuff too, and just thinking God would sprinkle something on me, and then all of a sudden I'd be patient. I'd be, able to work through my character defects and, coming to terms with it. Is like, it's so much broader than that, that now I really understand why it was I didn't change and people don't change, right? Because it'll cost you something. It's not like you can't pray. You got to put forth effort and a lot of action. But I think, that's a short answer, but it's really helped me be able to deal with the stressors of business. I used to say, you get it for X and you sell it for Y, and that was like it. That's what I thought it was. And come to find out of it, it's obviously a lot more complicated and it requires, again, going back to people to help you and support you. But just having programs, having sponsorship, having a connection with God, of my understanding, that's in control of situations and I'm not driving the bus anymore, allows me to treat people with love, empathy, compassion, and be rigorously honest with them, right? And have conversations that are based in truth that I would have otherwise, skirted the line or manipulated. Now I can, own my part of it, be transparent about things. And really, I think that has given way to the relationships I have with people, that has allowed for the business to start to take off, right, in its own way. And like I said, that is a miracle all of its own.
Wow. Yeah, I really appreciate your transparency, openness, and honesty. And, I can see how you're becoming more self-aware of the person that you used to become the better version of yourself. And that's amazing to see, So I'm also curious, what were the biggest challenges that you faced in the early stages of your business? And how did your experience with sobriety help you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, I think some of the early challenges, you have to think of it this way, right? And it's hard, I think, now, because people are like, well, you had to have a background in it. Like, I can't draw a stick figure, let alone, I'm serious. There, like, if there was a contest, there'd be 5 people ahead of me. And if there's only 5 of us or 4 people ahead of me that would be able to do a better stick figure. So to design a tech pack, I had no idea what that was, let alone be able to design it. I don't come from a schooling background in footwear design or nothing, right? So I think the first one was really, and it's something that's still a character defect of mine, but being able to really be sober, like truly sober, working a program, having a relationship with God, allowed me to work through that fear, right? Like, that was the first thing, right? Getting into a position where I took calculated risks and was able to, like I said, I literally traveled to a country. I've been to Mexico, but to a city I've never been to. I didn't know anyone. I had a design, a sketch. I did it like a job I hated, right? Like, to the best of my ability. And I just knew from wearing different boots and seeing things like what I wanted. So I would just kind of put it there, like, here's what I want, the elastic this, right? Like, measured to the best of my ability from boots I had. And then ran around the city of Leon, where I went in Guanajuato in Mexico, and just said, who can make this for me? And people were like, who, what? I literally spent days running around the street. Like, there they have vendors all throughout, right? So imagine like massive swamp meets and manufacturing, but you couldn't really get to these factories if you didn't have somebody or know. And then I ended up at a tannery, and just showed up, said I had an appointment. That wasn't true. But I got a salesman there to greet me, and he took me on a tour of this tannery. And, midway through the tannery, he goes, "Hey, Christian, like, I know you don't have an appointment, but it says a lot about you that you're standing in front of me." And he said, "I have a core belief that, like, I treat everybody as if though they're somebody, because you never know who they will become." And I remember that always stuck with me. And, that set forth that relationship and a bunch of other chains of events. But basically, I think sobriety really helped in 2 things, right? Seeing people for who they are, right? Like human beings, and treating them from that standpoint, that allowed for them to receive that. Because, we can tell and we can pick up when we're being used or we're being manipulated, right? So I think having the ability to connect with human beings as an actual person, like, they could relate to that, and see the sincerity and see the, like, eagerness to want to do something, but they're like, this kid has no idea what he's doing, And then I think, just overcoming fear, overcoming the defects, I think, that kept me kind of, from actually realizing things, right? Like, it's not going to work, insecurity, like all these things, like I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, like I have no background in it, all the things you can tell yourself. And I did, right, for a long time. And I think, sobriety really helped in that regard because I had tools and resources to work through those things and push just enough to get me, to do it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've been learning a lot and you've learned a lot and you've been able to apply that to help you grow not only yourself but your business. That's very inspiring for sure. So, can you talk a little about the importance of brand identity and how your values are reflected in your brand?
Yeah, I mean, brand identity and values are huge. I think just even tying that into what we just talked about, like, um, people being able to recognize your brand, for what it is. And I think a lot of it, like, it's named Christian Daniels. So Christian's my first name. Daniel's my middle name. It's my father's name. Um, and going back to, just the values there is like, I was given a name by, one of the human beings on this earth I love most. Right. So like, I took that as such an honor. Um, and going back to the part of us being interconnected as human beings, I'm like, I'm forever connected to this human being that gave me part of his name, right? And also put that initial love for boots and aesthetic in me, whether he recognized it or not. So building the brand around that and something that is true to me no matter what, like, it doesn't shift, right? The me believing in, that we're all interconnected as human beings, me having a love for people, that never shifts, right? So I think really, part of brand identity to me is really making sure that it's authentic and that it's something you can stand on and is unwavering no matter what happens. So whether the business shifts, whether you sell another product, like that for me is a core staple, in really building the brand identity. And then just kind of as it evolved, really, like, being kind of, I've had to be the face up front of it a lot. So at the end of the day, it's like how I interact with those people, going back to the same two principles, right? Like how you treat the customers, right? Because everybody who messages me, everybody who has called, everybody who sends me a DM, like, I recognize them as they are somebody who's taking time out of their precious life on earth to engage with me. So I try to treat them from that standpoint, like beyond the product, right? Like the sale or that transaction will happen, if they feel like they are seen, heard, and loved in some way, right? So I think, for me, it's really those principles, right? Seeing people for who they are, interconnection, right? Transparency, and then ultimately facilitating a great product. But really, that comes last, right? Like, that's a given. Nobody you talk to that is in boots is going to say, yeah, our boots are actually subpar. Like, we cut costs to save on materials, but you should buy them as if though they're the top of the line. Like, even if that's the case, no one ever comes out and says that, right? Everybody says they got the best. So the way, we've thought about this is like, we can separate ourselves by the way we go about treating people, the way, we handle the back end stuff that I think people can overlook, and just staying true to those values, right? Interconnected, integrity, honesty, and, authentic relationships with people.
Very nice. So how do you manage the stress and pressures of running your business while maintaining your sobriety?
I mean, I think one kind of feeds into the other, right? So like, today I heard this saying, and it applies to a bunch of things. You can apply it to relationships, you can apply it to, all kinds of things. So basically, it goes like, if I'm the hierarchy for me, is like this. It's like God, right? It's it's God, sobriety, right? Me, and then everything else, right? Family, the business, right? Because if God is first, everything else and I'm working a program and I'm taking care of me, the business, my family will feel like they're first. So it's when those things are out of line that people are impacted by it, right? Um, but they kind of overlap, right? If I'm working a good program, if I'm in a good if I'm in a good space, if I'm connected to higher power, then the business is doing better because I'm treating people better, right? Um, Also, like I'm regulated emotionally. I'm able to take on the numerous things. Like I was thinking about this the other day. There is no way, I was in self, right? I would panic. If things happen, I try to run and escape them, and usually would with numbing. Like I wasn't ever actually present, like fully present. And now, even though things happen, I mean, I've had a bunch things happen every day right now, right? Like every day, there's something that I would have ran from in the past that comes up, right? And now I'm able to sit through it, acknowledge the feelings, the emotions in it. I have a group and people I can go to say, hey, here's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling a lot of fear about this. I'm having economic insecurities about what's going on here, and talk to somebody and just kind of bring those things to light. So I feel like they really overlap and they help each other, right? If I am sober, working a program, connected, then usually I'm able to handle all the stressors that come along with it because it's a lot. I can't imagine, like these huge conglomerates. I mean, it's like there's a ton of people involved, and more than anything, every single business I've come to learn, at least, and I'll speak from my perspective, it deals with different personalities. Like in order to accomplish making a boot, there's probably 10 to 12 people that it goes through. And that's 10 to 12 different personalities, different upbringings, right? Different perspectives. And you have to be able to work with them and not against them, and vice versa. You have to be able to treat them as human beings and communicate with them. And I think that's been a big learning experience too, right? Because it's a different role for me. Um, it's kind of like it's being people's boss, but also treating them like as human beings, and just like we're all on this journey is like the way I try to approach this, right? Like um I take feedback, I listen, I also understand, I've been on that side of things. So it's interesting, even just in our business now, like I pivoted to doing manufacturing for other clients. So not just building out my own brand, but also manufacturing for others. And that's interesting, right? Because the same things I wanted when I went to other factories to get my stuff made, right? Honesty, what stage we're in development, like cost, right? All these things that we agree, agreements, contracts, timelines, all the things that I wanted from people. Now I'm on the flip side. So now people want from me, and it's important, having had people let me down on this side, that I don't do the same thing for them.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't realize is when you're a business owner, right? You're not necessarily a boss. You're actually, a lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna have people work for me, but basically you're working for them. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it really comes down to. So that's kind of a good point that you got to treat everybody as as people. You can't treat them like you're better than them or anything like that, because that's not the way to make connections and build a good business. So I'm glad you just brought up those points. And I'm kind of curious, what kind of setbacks have you had um, with your boot brand, and what what did you learn from it?
I mean, I got a setback every single day. I'm not like maybe every other hour right now, but I mean, key ones obviously is like, I mean, the first one is I had no knowledge of what I wanted, like how I was going to accomplish what I saw in my mind. It's like literally, if anybody's listening, and let's say you're like, I want to build a spaceship. It'd be the equivalent, right? Spaceship might be a little harder than the boot, but you literally would have to go figure it out, because that's how much I knew about building a boot. And so I think from the gate, it was like, how can I get someone to understand what I'm trying to build and then build it for me. So once that happened, the first major setback I had. So I go to the tannery, I get a tour, I'm on cloud nine. I find some guy, I go to their factory, shows me around, takes measurements of my foot. I'm excited. He's like, we'll do the sample run. We can do what you want. I'm like, yes, finally, thank you. I come back to the States. He sends me a quote. At the time, it was a lot of money for me, right? He's like, I'm going to make you a run. This is how it works. We run, a sample in each size. We go ahead and get things going, build the last, all these things. I send over the money. Time goes by. I hear from, yeah, we're working on it. Eventually, long story short, the guy disappears, takes the money. I haven't seen him to this day. So, I mean, right then, and looking back at it, I was so grateful for that major setback. And I'm so grateful it happened at the beginning. Because if I was going to quit, I would have quit that day. But I didn't. It was just like, okay, well, this guy, it was an unfortunate situation, but not everybody's going to be like that. And there's good people out there and somebody's going to build it. And so, again, then I went back to the drawing board, kept see who could help me. And believe it or not, like, staying in action, like, I was doing interviews, I was like on Instagram. It led me to find, another person. And that didn't work out. Then it led me to another manufacturer. Also didn't work out. Each time I felt like this was the one. And through connection and people, then it led me to one that actually built the run I got. And then there were some things there that was like, this is not it either. And ultimately, it pushed me to set up my own team in my own facility, which is what I have now. But it was like, I didn't understand it then, but I was going to school. I went to school for 5 years, not because I wanted to. I just never quit. Like, I never stopped. I was just always moving. I mean, I would, people were like, what are you doing? Even when I formulated the team I have now, people were like, why would you build a team when you don't have a big enough brand? And they were right, but they couldn't see what I could see. What I could see is like, there's a need in the space for people that were me. And if I can just build it, I felt like they'll come. And, it kind of has given way, but I think, just overcoming those obstacles. And then obviously people are like, well, what about finance? Right. So, I ran a Kickstarter initially too, because I didn't have the finance. Some of these minimums are, 300, 500, you're talking, 80 to 120,000 sometimes. And I didn't have that money, but I think through it, I never took no. Like, I was never like, I had this idea and I was going to see it through some way, somehow.
I think there's a common theme with you, and the word that sticks out and comes to my mind is perseverance. You know what I mean? And speaking of perseverance, I'm sure you've been learning a lot, about business, about yourself, and how to be able to grow your brand. Because as you said, you didn't know much about that initially, but what are some of the strategies that you've been able to implement to grow your boot brand that has helped you stand out in a competitive market that may help, someone else who's trying to start their own boot brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think, some of the things, and we've talked offline and you've been helpful with it too, is just making sure you have an online presence. I mean, I didn't have a social media, growing up or at all until I started the boot brand. And I was like, I don't need one. People are like, you absolutely need one. I was like, nope. And sure enough, if I come to think of it, some of the best relationships I've got in customers has actually stemmed from social media. Literally, I mean, I can't tell you, like I would say 90% of everything I've done has come from social media. But again,
businesses take social media for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it is. We've talked about it a lot. It is a free form of marketing to some degree, and um, more than that is like you can build relationships. You stay in front of people. So I think that's been huge. And then also developing a website and having to pay for that and building a relationship with somebody who worked with me and broke it down, understood it, and built it out the way I saw it. Um, but even now, I think it really boiled down to like making sure that you nurture those relationships, right? And for me, that's maybe a part that I find a little easier because I genuinely like building relationships and touching base with people or getting on the phone and doing that. To me, it's not a burden. It's actually like one of the most rewarding things that this business has done for me. Um, but yeah, doing that, doing things like what we're doing right now, all of it is part of what makes it successful. Like, there's no way I would have the clients I have right now if I didn't have online presence, if I wasn't active in it and actually using it. Like, I mean, I've really come to understand it as like a resource. Like, if you use it properly, if you connect from a genuine place, if you're honest about what you're doing, it will lead people to gravitate and connect with you. Um, and that's really what I found. I think it doesn't matter if you're sending an email, it doesn't matter if you're getting on a phone call, it doesn't matter if you're sending somebody a DM. I think as long as people can pick up that what you promote is actually who you are, like that resonates.
Definitely. I definitely agree with you on that. And social media is very powerful, especially if you use it in the right ways. Uh, it, I wish a lot of businesses would be able to understand that, but it comes down to the education aspect of it. They need to learn, how to utilize it properly and stuff like that. It's not just like a little kid platform, as a lot of, older people think. They see TikTok and they think, oh, it's just, little girls dancing, making dancing videos on there, but it's a lot more than that. And if they're willing to put the time and effort or learn, they can be successful and find, a lot of clients or build their business on those platforms also. So, talking a little bit about social media, how do you go about engaging with your customers, and what role does storytelling play in your strategies for, your online presence and with your website and social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story part of it is huge, right? Like, people buy product for the story and for the people behind the brand ultimately, right? It's like the old saying, right? If I like you, I'm going to do business with you. Like, and I think that's true, right? At the end of the day, you don't buy from people you don't like. The storyline, it's an authentic story, which is beautiful. And I've been fortunate. I didn't have to generate one or create one. Um, but getting that story to resonate with people, doing things like this. Again, I've done podcasts, interviews on social media, lives, the website, right? You can go to it, you can see the story, you'll see the photo of my dad and you'll see the factory, you'll see the tannery, you'll see me with the employees. Like, that was all real. Like, we took photos and videos while we were actually at the factory building things. It wasn't like set up or staged. The people where we're laughing, where we're having time, where we're eating food, where I'm meeting their families, like, that's all real stuff, right? Like, I've been down to the factory. I mean, at this point, I don't know, 30, 40 times, like, and this is like in the last 2 years, right? So those relationships you see through the storytelling are true and authentic, and what goes on, right? Like, I've learned a lot about the business by just being around it and learning and taking it all in. Like, I could live in a factory, and I know that's not like for everybody, but literally I would set up a mat and just be in there watching. It's like, it's amazing to see these like old world art like in front of your eyes, and like the joy and the ease with which people do it is phenomenal. Like, but yeah, all of that, Instagram, the same thing, making sure you, and I do interesting things, I think, in the sense that, like, I'll tie in God, I'll tie in like the ocean and things that like I love, and the boots and people. and clients. So like, I mean, it might be an unorthodox way to go about it, but like, I am just who I am, and I represent the brand in everything I do. And now, I have two people that have joined and are part of it. Um, and they've been so helpful in that too. And I mean, just having that team mentality, and the employees at the factory, like, we communicate every single day, numerous times a day. I mean, if we hopped on the phone or sent less, I mean, we probably send between 100 and 150 messages a day, and we hop on the phone or FaceTime. I mean, I don't know, 8 to 10 times would be low a day. So there's a lot of that, but yeah, the story's huge and important. And I think it resonates, and you can do that through social media, your website, and then who you are, right? Like when people bump into you, or I've met people out on the street, it's like, there you go. There's a story.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You always need to be networking as a business owner. And I'll definitely make sure to add your website and your socials in the description on this video. Talking about that. So, in what ways do you believe the business world can be more supportive for entrepreneurs in recovery or those who choose a sober lifestyle?
I mean, I think that's it's hard to say, because I feel like, and everybody's experience might be different, right? So I'll speak from my experience. I have actually never had anybody in the business world, like, speak to it from like, oh, that's not what you should be doing, or hey, let's go do this. Like, people have been extremely kind and respectful to my own sobriety, my own story. I think, nowadays more than ever, there are more people that are sober. So it's becoming more okay, at least with alcohol, right? But like, I mean, my addictions aren't just limited to alcohol, right? So everybody's different in that way, but I feel like overall people have been very kind and accepting of who I am, because the truth of the matter is, like, I am who I am, and that's either enough for you or it's not, but it doesn't change how I respond or who I am because of that. So I think maybe I've been fortunate in that way, but on the contrary, I think it's like, a lot of the program is like, lead with your weakness, right? Because like, my weakness, the reason I am where I am, I think, is like, leading with my weakness has actually given me strength. And other, I think in normal, like, society terms, we always want to lead with our strengths. Like, I'm this, I do this, I come from this, I have this, I can do this for you. And it's like, I think through the program, through just understanding who God was or is like, leading with your weakness actually becomes a strength.
Kind of goes back to what we were discussing earlier, of your transparency and honesty, and how it seems to be really helping you and being able to impact your business in a positive way. So I really love that, that you're, it's been able to help you. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, like you say, do talk about leading with your strengths, and they kind of don't, they're insecure about that, showing that vulnerable side, especially as businesses, But another thing that I have noticed too about business owners is, a lot of them, not all of them, of course, right? But the majority of them, they got to where they were, not because they were mean people. They learned the skills to be able to communicate and, help people. A lot of business owners get into a business to help people. And that's huge. I wish a lot more people understood that. A lot of people try to put business owners down because, they're the boss, they're the man. And, that's not necessarily true. They've gotten to where they're at because they love to help people. So, I'd like you to share, a particular milestone or something that you're proud of that, you've been able to accomplish with your boot brand.
Yeah, I mean, there's, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Eric, the being able to give back and to help people. And I mean, that's key. Without finding joy and the ability to do that, like, I mean, everybody has different motives, but for mine, it's not like incentivized by money. You know, I mean, I can go do, trust me, it's not that, you know, I can go do something else and make more money. It's really just, um, that connection at the end of the day in those relationships. So, um, I would say for me, like, I mean, truthfully, it's going to sound cheesy, but just like that first time that I was like able to get into the tannery, like that was such a milestone. Like for somebody to recognize what I was trying to do and to be seen in that way was like huge. Like I think that guy, he doesn't work there anymore. His name is Roberto. I've tried to look for him, but him recognizing what I was trying to do and see it like lit me up. You know, it gave me like hope. Um, and then since then, it was obviously like one of them was selling the first pair of boot. Like, I remember when that happened, just the transaction and being like, wow, like people have accepted seeing the story, like seen me, seen the design, the concept, the quality behind it, and they were willing to exchange some of their hard-earned money for that product. Like that was a huge milestone. Um, and more recently, you know, it was, you know, and then developing out a good website, like that was a milestone, right? Like I had it on Wix. Like, I mean, I did it, you know, it was just like, so seeing the storyline come together, right? That was huge. Um, you know, going from 17 followers on Instagram to almost 4,000 now, like that was huge, right? And you know, it's not 4 million, but I always say like it's not the quantity, it's the quality. Like a lot of those people I actually know, they're not like some robot in wherever, you know, like the likelihood is if you're on my social media, like we've interacted on some way, shape, or form. So that's huge to me. And then obviously just um, the really, really big one that like I have had in my mind for a long time that has recently gave way was being able to set up my own team. Like the way God kind of put everybody together and brought us like, I mean, if I, you know, that could be its own story one day. Like people would not believe how the team came together. And, you know, more recently, you know, I went down there, we rented, um, another location, like and it's just like a proper space, and like signing that was like a huge thing. And, you know, recently, like, you know, getting, you know, the clients we have now and building that relationship and like, you know, having, and I say the money, but it's not because of the money. It's because, you know, you can go back and forth with people, right? And it's all it is words until the money gets into the account, right? Then it's like, it's formal. There's an understanding of what you're going to be receiving and what you're going to be getting on behalf of us as a team, as people, because now we're responsible for your product. So that was a huge milestone. Like sometimes even now it's like, I mean, I was thinking about it earlier, like I'm in disbelief, you know, I'm like everything that like I was up here is happening now. Like not in a, you know, I'm not Nike or, you know, whoever, but like in my own version, it has happened. Not when I wanted it, not how I wanted it, but on God's time, it happened.
I don't even know what to say there. That's, you know, quite a lot to take in. Um, you've had so much success, you know, and each little milestone that you've had, you see it as success. It's really nice to see that, you know, a lot of people don't take the time to kind of give themselves a little pat on the back each step of the way, and kind of see where they came from, you know. So that's really admirable. And, you know, I know that you're going to do great and keep going on to, you know, bigger and greater things. So just keep it up. And on that note too, I was curious, like what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who may be struggling with their own sobriety?
Well, thanks, man. Thank you for those words. I would say if, anybody's out there, entrepreneur or not, right, struggling with sobriety or their own demons, whatever it may be, or whatever you refer to it as, is like the first is like have the willingness to be vulnerable enough to seek out help, right? Or to love yourself enough. And sometimes you can't, right? Like I wasn't in a place to love myself, but I loved other people enough to go out and do that, right? Like my own pain and suffering was enough to be like, I don't yet love myself, but I love these people enough to go seek out help. And yeah, I mean, be rigorously honest with yourself and with what's going on around you and how it's impacting you. If anything is impacting you in a negative way, it's likely worth looking at, even if you don't think it's an addiction, like whatever that is. I mean, it can be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be porn, it could be sex, it could be women, men, whatever it is, food, whatever the thing is, TV, right? Like too much of anything. And it's more like what it causes in your brain, right? Like it's that obsession that messes with you, and it creates, like, for me, it's like the shame cycle that just goes and goes, and you swear you're never going to do it, and once you have some time, then you're right back to it, and it's that psychological change, leads to spiritual death. So I would just say seek out help. We live in a country that does have a lot of resources, whether it's AA, sobriety, like all those things are free. Like, you don't know, drop in, say, I need help. Like, here's what I'm struggling with. And what you'll find is compassion, empathy, and people willing to go out of their way to help. I went to rehab. I didn't know any different because I watched TV and I thought that's where you go. And it gave me enough space away from it to then seek out programs, and more recently, like a new program and a new way of really looking at the character defects and the problems within me, and that feelingness of unworthiness. But there's a lot. So I would say first communicate that out loud, because I'll speak for myself. I can live in my head and not share the feelings and emotions of what's really going on, right? This attitude of like, everything's all right. Like, but meanwhile, I know how I'm living and how I'm moving, but it's like, it's just part of it. It's just part of being a male. It's just part of, I'm in my 20s and this is normal and all these things. And, you just keep on piling on those like false narratives, and eventually you start to believe your own stuff, and then you might even get to the point where you're delusional enough and you're selling it to other people. Right. So now you're not just impacting yourself. I mean, I say that because that was me. So yeah, just really reaching out, finding resources, and I'm a resource. If anybody is struggling, entrepreneur or not, or, wants to hear like my story from my perspective and it in any way helps you, I'm all for it, always.
I really appreciate that you're always willing to help someone and at least have a conversation with them and hopefully guide them in the right direction. A lot of the younger generation, or a lot of people in general, what it really takes is to be able to start a journey of healing, start a journey of growth, is to look inward, right? Look in the mirror and see like, okay, do I like the person that I see in the mirror right now? Is this the person that I want it to be? Is this the person that I want to be? Sure. And once you come up with that answer, right, and probably not, then it's time to like, seek help. But it takes that individual to be able to do that. Nobody can do that for that individual. And that's, where things can be difficult for friends, family, etc. Right? So it can be hard at times for the people around them. But it's that one individual that has to take that step and that leap forward to say, something's wrong with me, or I need to grow, and how do I get help? And, once they make that decision and that clicks in their head, then they're able to start that journey. So I really appreciate you, being able to be a resource for these people, because sometimes people don't know where to go. You know what I mean? And like you said, there's a ton of places that they can go to, but when you're starting down that path, it could seem like there's nobody out there for you, especially when all your friends, or whoever you were hanging out with before, they may have been the people that were, your drinking buddies, and they're definitely not going to support you because, as I said, they're not the ones that are looking in the mirror. They're still where they're, where they're at, probably at the bar somewhere, So on that note, let's talk about what the future is looking like for you, and what are your like long-term goals for your boot brand, and how do you plan to achieve those?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Eric. I mean, I think right now, really focused on a couple things, right? So first, is we've hired some people to help with like the client facing stuff, forward facing stuff, also like website and things, and then accounting. So things that allow me to kind of do the relationship side of things also, and that's kind of been a new change. So really fortunate and grateful for that. Also wanting to really develop out the manufacturing side of things, right? Like for handcrafted, high quality boots at a like for somebody starting off to mid level company. Um, whether you're another version of me, just somebody with a dream, and we literally uh, just talk to somebody like that. Like this guy reminds me of me, and now being on the other side, it was like, well, does this make sense logistically? Like financially, doesn't really make like the time we're gonna have to. But I was like, I was talking to our team, and I was like, I see myself in him. Like he's scattered. He's got like, and if you're listening, like I mean this with respect, but it's like designs, and he's like this idea, and like if we took this and some of the things he's saying, it's like we can't actually do that. Like I don't know even a big factory that can do that, but to see that, it lights me up. It gets me excited because I'm like, man, this was me, you know. So we're gonna help them, but just developing out things like that, right? So whether it's you got a one man crew, or you got you're making, I don't know, a couple hundred, pairs, and you want to find a high quality place to make boots that aren't, mass produce, and we take integrity into account, and we'll keep you updated. We'll give you visuals of what's going on. We'll adhere to a timeline, and we'll make some really good stuff for you. Like we want to be the people you guys come to in Leon, right? And there's a huge benefit to that. So that's really like where we're focusing right now, building those relationships. Like we can't take on a bunch of things, but we can build a couple meaningful relationships with people or brands. And then the other side of it is just continuing to develop out Christian Daniel, right? So we got a couple things lined up for spring and summer. We're going to really try to make stuff that's more accommodating. So we got a boot releasing, but we also got some sneakers. So really pivoting to making some sneakers kind of for spring, for summer. Some really nice stuff coming out. We're excited about. So we're developing that. We're also going to be launching these tours that we've been working on and keep pushing it back, but really where it's immersive and people can come see the production, see the tanneries, see the whole process and the build out, because we feel like we want to turn it into something that's really immersive for people, right? If it's one thing buying a product, you can go wherever, but you're not going to get that experience. So again, going back to the connection piece with clients. So that's something we're excited about getting off the ground for the first time. It's all pretty set up. Just picking the right timeline and seeing, how many people are into it. Man, if it's one person, we'll go, we really think it'll be a memorable experience, and, getting ready for winter. Just really, we got good leathers and some new stuff coming out. So continuing to build. And I think, the way we've talked about it, because we're kind of taking on two different sides of things. So the manufacturing, which obviously takes up a lot of time, and also it's like it's not just the building of stuff; it's the back and forth and the client development and all that stuff. But also then dropping some ready to wear stuff on our website. We've been working on. We had to hold off on that a little bit because we took on these clients. But getting that on the website where people can go. We're going to do small batch runs. People can go on there, buy it. When it goes, it goes. And then in between that, doing a pre-order, right? So maybe a little bit more exotic leather or a very limited build. And same thing, once it's up, pre-order whatever comes in during that time frame, that's it, right? Because we're kind of in this situation where time is really really important, and trying to juggle the two things is challenging. But it's where we have to stay kind of focused. So those are the things kind of on the horizon of the brand.
I'm very excited to see what the future has in store for you. That's for sure. And I definitely try to let people know about your boots every time. I hear somebody that has an interest in boots, because I know your boots, how hard you put into the design and into your business. So I really appreciate seeing, how you've been able to grow from the bottom up, from your idea to where you're at now. And I know that this is just the beginning for you. So I'm extremely proud of you, and, where you've come from and where you're going. So finally, what's the last message you'd like to leave to our listeners about the intersection of entrepreneurship and sobriety?
Thanks, E. Yeah, I mean, first of all, we gotta get you a pair of boots. Okay, it's been a long time, so I'm gonna make sure we'll talk and we'll start.
It's funny. I was actually, because my birthday was the other day, I was like, man, I should have got some boots from him so I could wear these today, because I was like wearing these shoes, and I was like, these would look good right now if I was wearing his boots would look good, and I was like thinking about you. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna get a pair.
I saw them when you posted. I was like, he's missing the boots, man. Look,
That's literally what I was thinking too. That's literally what I was thinking too.
That's funny. So, but yeah, man, we'll get you right. And yeah, I mean, I think just, last thoughts is just, I'm rooting for you. If you have a dream, if you have a vision, go after it, pursue it, look for help. I mean, the amount of people that have helped me, I mean, I can't count. Like, it is insane, and everybody adds something, but you have to, again, kind of what you touched on, whether it's business or whether it's sobriety or whether it's just a better life. Like, our time on earth is so finite. So finite. It's easy to have the perception that we have another day, we have another week, another year, right? The New Year's resolution comes, and it's like, and I can speak from my own experience. I was somebody who had a lot of ideas, but had problems with action. And now it's like I stay in action, and things happen when I stay in action, right? So I stay connected to God, I stay connected to people, and I stay in action. And usually what happens is something unexpected or expected, just in not my timeline usually, sets forth, right? Like, I've wanted my own thing for as far back as I could happen, and it took 5 years, right? I wanted a client, and it took almost a year. Like, all these different things, right? And it's hard to keep faith and hope alive when you're not seeing the things happen. And that's a big thing, right? Patience, faith, hope, and just setting things in motion, stay in action. And the same applies to your own, like, health or well-being or recovery. It's just like, have the willingness to go seek help, to love yourself enough to go do it, and then ask for help, right? And then you're going to have to put forth the action. So I think one thing, I really want people to walk away from, and obviously there's people that own business on a whole nother level, but it's like, I now have a newfound respect for those people, because I'm like, oh, it's easy to see them when they're in their, they're in the Mercedes and they got the house and they're traveling, and you're like, man, I wish I could just travel and have my own business. And it's like, if you only knew what it took for them to get there. Like, I mean, it's not easy. I'm not there, but I can just tell you from the little thing I do have, it's like, most people don't actually want to put forth, right? Because, again, whether it's sobriety or business, it's going to cost you something. And it's going to come through pain. It's going to come through, your character defects, fear, anxiety, control, all those things being tested, sometimes all at once. And you're going to have tools, people, higher power, all of those things involved just to get you through. And then, even when all that happens, there's no guarantee it's going to work. But I think, for me, having the mentality that my time here is limited, like, and I don't know when it's up. So I want to make sure that I put forth the effort, um, and just I'm okay with that. Like whatever happens, if this ended today, I already have newfound perspective, information, value that I can then pass on. Like that they can't take, and I think there's such value in that. So I'm grateful for this experience, however it ends, however it goes, or whatever comes about. Like I'm grateful that I had the willingness to work through the fear and put it out there, and that applies in my own personal journey in sobriety and also in business. So my prayer, my hope is that anybody listening that is motivated by it, that they have the willingness to go do it.
Well, Christian, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your openness, speaking about your journey with your business, building your brand, and also with your sobriety. Thanks again. And if anyone wants to find Christian, make sure to read the description. The website will be below, and so will his social media links.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a pleasure. Next time we'll do this interview not in the car.
Sounds good. And that wraps up another episode of Success Solutionz. A huge thank you to Christian Ramos for joining us today and for sharing his powerful journey from addiction to the helm of Christian Daniel Boots. Christian's story is a profound reminder that our greatest challenges can lead to our most significant achievements. For everyone listening, we hope Christian's journey inspires you to face your struggles with courage and to remember that it's never too late to change your path and build something meaningful. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring stories like Christian's. And if you want to learn more about Christian Daniel Boots, be sure to check out the links in the episode description. Thank you for tuning in to the Success Solutionz podcast. Keep pushing forward, keep dreaming big, and until next time, here's to your success.